In my last video, I talked a little bit about my journey to becoming a life coach and how I, almost by happenstance, started to counsel people and help people through transitions in their life, through issues with their health, with their relationships, with their career, or people who were just simply trying to level up a life that was already rather good and rewarding. In this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about fear. And fear is certainly something that each of us has to deal with all the time. Obviously, fear is quite a broad topic, so I'm not going to cover all of the aspects that I could, but I just want to talk about a couple of things, mostly about how to overcome fear or how to transmute fear into a more productive emotion or more productive energy that you can use to take action. There's a lot that could be said about fear, so I'm just going to narrow it down to a couple of little things that I think are really, really helpful to help change the energy of fear into something that can be used for creativity and for purpose. And indeed, this is literally the first thing I ask any client of mine to do, is to start documenting the things that they are afraid of. So, for instance, starting this video series gave me an incredible amount of anxiety. It's just the fact that social media is something that plays on some of our most primal fears of being judged, of being seen by others as appearing stupid or appearing to be something that has a negative connotation. And for me personally, that fear was amplified many-fold by the fact that in the last couple of years, I have indeed been attacked quite a lot on social media for sharing ideas and for pushing back against certain things. So the very idea of starting a video series and broadcasting that again on social media led to an intense amount of fear. But one of the things that I learned through particularly meditation practice is that fear is simply just another emotion. And what we can do is observe our fear, observe our emotions. If we can do it objectively, then we can overcome it. And you might have heard being brave is not about not feeling fear. It's about feeling fear and doing the thing that needs doing anyway. So one of the most powerful techniques that I've ever come across for using fear productively is something that we call fear journaling. If anyone finds themselves in a situation where they are overcome with things like anxiety or worry or concern, anything that could broadly be linked to fear, I invite them to try this basic technique. It's as simple as taking either a notepad, a video recorder, or a voice recorder, and just journaling out fears for 5 minutes, but making it a daily habit. The point here is to go as deep as possible into the fear, feel it as deeply as you possibly can. You're not trying to run away from it. You're not trying to find solutions. You're trying to understand exactly what it is that you feel fear about. And there's a couple of reasons that this is so powerful. When we speak something, when we make it objective, we actually take away a lot of its power, because a lot of the things that we're afraid of usually are lurking in the background of our mind, creating a physiological sensation through our body that actually, if we were to articulate it properly, we would see that there's no concern or no reason to be afraid. We know this to be true because when somebody comes to us with their concerns, with their worries, it's usually quite easy to dismiss them and say, oh, that's simple, or that's not a big deal, or don't worry about it, right? It's very easy for us to say this to somebody else, but it's much more difficult for us to recognize the fear and concern and worry in ourselves and treat it as the objective physiological response that it actually is. So this fear journaling technique, it requires you to search for those feelings, to understand them, bring them into light, make them objective. And then the fact that you have them recorded there, you can then see them as though you are the other person, the person who says, don't worry about it. So while you're fear journaling, you're not looking for answers. You're not looking for solutions. You're just trying to feel it and trying to get it out. And then by recording it, either on paper or in voice or on video, you get the chance to review it if you so choose. Simply saying it out loud is good enough. But if you so choose, you can go back and you can hear yourself. You can hear how petty many of our basic fears are. Like for me, my fear that I felt going back into the public media realm when I'd said I wasn't going to do it, when I've been attacked, when I've been shamed, I've had people from my past come up and try to use things that I've done in my past against me purely for stating my opinion. And so I felt fear of being judged and looked down upon, or people thinking that I wasn't true to my word because I said I was coming back when I said I would never come back. So all of these things played out. But ultimately, by making fear objective and having the bravery and courage to do what we think is right or purposeful anyway, we actually free ourselves and allow ourselves to live according to the way that we choose to live, and we're not controlled by fear. The reason why fear is such an important emotion for us is that it actually reduces our what's called our behavioral set quite dramatically. When we are in a fear response, our options really are, as far as our physiology is concerned, either fight, freeze, or flight. If our behavioral set is so limited, then it's easy for us to be controlled by forces that work on that fear, that stoke our fear. But when we can objectively recognize that we are afraid, but choose to behave in not from a place of fear, but a place of abundance, then we become free. We become free to be able to express ourselves in the way that we choose, rather than having our behavior dictated by our fear, or even worse, controlled by those who produce fear in us. The second thing that I ask people to do when it comes to fear journaling is that once they have spent 5 minutes journaling, again, either on paper, voice recorder, or on video, after 5 minutes, I instruct them to change their emotional valence to one of gratitude. So this is a very, very different physiological emotion where instead of looking for the negative emotions, we start to look around us. We look outside of ourselves and we start to notice all of the things in our environment that we are grateful for, that give us pleasure, that give us joy. Gratitude, as opposed to fear, is a very, what you might call, high vibrational energy or emotion. And another way to think of it is that our behavioral repertoire that can come from a place of gratitude is actually enormous, in fact, almost infinite. When we live in a place of abundance, when we live in a place of gratitude, then we have a much greater ability to choose through love, through gratitude, our behaviors, and we're not controlled by fear. So gratitude is effectively another word for abundance, because when we look at what we have, whatever we have, even if we have basically very, very simple possessions, we don't have to have great adornments, we don't have to have flashy things. When we live in a place of gratitude, we're grateful for everything that we have. And that is true abundance, to be grateful for what you have, as opposed to having a fear or scarcity mentality in which we compare what we have to what others have, in which case we create a contrast and we start to evaluate what we could have instead of being grateful for what we do have. So every client that comes and works with me, regardless of whether they come to me because they're in a bit of a hole and a bit of a pit and they need some counseling therapy to bring them back up to their baseline, or if they're already quite well established in many areas of their life and just want to take themselves to the next level, regardless, I still ask them to document their thoughts, document their fears, understand the fears that are in their head, because we all have them. Even if we are at a level of abundance, it's still that we are still human, and so we still have those same physiological mechanisms within us. And the value of becoming aware of what's in your head and what you're afraid of helps you to transmute fear energy into something of greater worth, like gratitude, which is abundance. So this technique is a way of taking us from a mindset of scarcity into a mindset of abundance. And so I think one of the best things that humans can understand is when we are in fear, how to understand it, how to make it objective, how to transcend it, and transmute all of that into a more productive set of emotions.